Hello, and welcome to the last session in Random Strangers to Raving Fans. My name is Jennifer Denny, and I am your instructor for this course. And it is a new world of measurement. So you may or may not be aware that G4 is coming. That is a whole new way to look at data. Our way that we have always looked at data with universal analytics has a lot of changes. And so, what we're going to go through today is going to be what all of those changes are. So, as you've been following along, again, this is part of the series of Random Strangers to Raving Fans. And we've been talking about all along how to use digital marketing to drive prospects and move them through your sales funnel. And this last part will be how to measure the results. So you're not going to get it right the first time that you go out there and you develop a plan, and it may or may not work. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to measure that and see what the differences are. A lot has kind of changed. And so we're moving people through different parts of the funnel. And it's important to understand maybe where somebody is getting stuck at the visitor, they're getting stuck at the prospect. Maybe they're a customer and they're not moving on to becoming a fan. And it's important for us to understand and identify those different areas. So, like I said, let's talk through everything that has changed with G4 and talk about how to measure success. So, first of all, let's start at a bigger scope and just talk about how things are moving to a cookie-less measurement. What do we mean by that? So, with G4, there are a lot of privacy features that are now built in, and that means that we're moving more towards conversion modeling. And that word modeling is very important because before we used to have with a greater level of certainty that we knew somebody clicked through, we knew somebody did this or do that, and all of that is changing. It's no longer going to be as much of an exact science, and G4 data is going to rely on modeled data. The problem with that is some of you might not have a whole lot of data or a whole lot of traffic, and so it's going to be less valuable information because you're not going to have as much. I think it's important to understand that, so when you're making these decisions that you are on a modeled data. New type of properties really adapts to changing environments as it relates to privacy, and it will reveal intelligent business insights through machine learning. So as it understands you better, it will adapt and it will get better as it gets more traffic that comes in. A big difference between Universal Analytics and G4 is that G4 is based on events. So rather than interactions that you make on a website, and that's really fundamentally different. When you think about interactions you make on a website, you came in and you did certain items, and then you had the capability to measure that. How G4 is different is everything is based on events. So even coming into the website is a page view, and that is a particular type of event. There are a ton of naturally coming in events that will come into the website that we never had access to before. For instance, one of the natural events that comes in is going to be scroll data. You used to have to set up tracking, or you'd have to buy a software in order to know if somebody scrolled down, a certain part of the page. Now we're going to naturally kind of get that information. It's also going to naturally track a lot of different events, such as clicking on forms, downloading those forms. And so, in a lot of cases, a lot of coding has gone away, and it's going to make it easier for us to actually know what happens when somebody gets to a website. Because, after all, when we're doing all this other type of marketing, we need to know how engaged that buyer is once they get to the website, come in and they don't immediately see what they're looking for. It's possible that we are targeting the wrong audience, or it's possible that we have some work that we need to do on our website. So those events are very important. Like I just mentioned, some of the new metrics that we're going to see is engagement. So this is a metric that G4 has really put at the forefront. Google is now more interested on whether or not we have engaged traffic. They define that by anybody that lasts longer than 10 seconds, had a conversion event, or had looked at 2 or more screen views. That is considered a engaged person. And so we're going to see those type of metrics instead of what we're kind of used to, bounce rate, where that would measure whether or not somebody came in and did not click on anything and immediately left. That's fundamentally different in how you look at your users. Before, they could have come in and they could have made a phone call and they could have gotten what they wanted and they would immediately left. And having a high bounce rate is not necessarily a bad thing. What Google is now looking at is they want to look at more people who are engaged. And this is why they're looking for quality content, like we said in another episode, that is going to get the best bang for your buck. So there's also going to be a lot of different metrics that are going to be looked at a little bit different. So users in G4 is going to be described slightly different than what they were in page views is a little bit different. Purchasers, session conversions, all those metrics though will be there as well to kind of see the difference between those. All right, so this is a big change. With before, when you did universal analytics, you had 5 different types of goals that you could track. You could track a destination, whether or not somebody actually filled out a form and a thank you page fired, and you could track that. You could track duration. So how long people spent on that would become a conversion. You could track if somebody had been so many pages or how long of a session they had, and those would become conversions. And you could track event goals. With G4 though, none of those are available as they were before. Now you can only track events, or you can only track pages or thank you pages. So a lot has changed on what you can track. So if you haven't moved over to the G4 platform, you want to move over as quickly as you can, because you might have to reset up all of your conversions that you had set up before in order to make sure that they are available. The easiest way to do that is going to be through GTM or Google Tag Manager. It's really simple to get your tags set up. Got to turn events into conversions, and that's going to be the easiest way. There are also challenges right now, though, that some third-party platforms that are out there haven't quite converted over to G4. And so there's a little bit of a back and forth right now of making sure that these are getting updated and are going to be updated. You might have to make some different decisions if some platforms don't update to G4, which is a possibility. Another really big change that has come with G4, before with Universal Analytics, all the credit for any conversions that happened were given on a last click attribution, meaning the very last thing that you did gets 100% of the credit. Google has really gone out and changed this to where now the default is data driven. So it's going to distribute credit for the conversion based on the data for each individual conversion event, and that is the default. So the default is no longer the last thing that you've done. It's really going to be driven by the data. There's going to be machine learning algorithms that are going to incorporate factors such as time from conversion, device type, number of ad interactions, and the order of ads and exposure in order to attribute different types of conversions. There's also going to be cross-channel rule-based models and an ads preferred model. So there are 3 different types of attribution that you can choose. With G4, we're also going to lose a lot of the data that we had. Definitely simplified reporting, and there's going to be less complication as what you had with Universal Analytics. Now, I liked the complication. I liked everything that you could possibly get to. So if you're used to that kind of model, you might get into G4 and be like, oh, where's this? Where's that? And it's not there anymore. So it's important to kind of get in there sooner than later and understand what you can get and what you can't. So there's really just 3 different areas. There is the life cycle with acquisition. So it's going to provide information about where your traffic originated. There are engagement reports, and with engagement reports, it's going to go through and show you different things that people have done on the website with events, such as did they download a form? Did they scroll a page? Did they look at multiple pages? And then there's going to be conversion events. And so these are events that you have determined need to be a conversion, and you turn those in as well. The last area is going to be the monetization. And so this is where you're going to see all the e-commerce data that you are used to seeing with Universal. Not really any loss of data or different reporting that is available with monetization. Everything that was there before is in G4 as well. So this is another big change. Prior, you really didn't have this many choices when it came to default channel groupings. And the reason that's important is before, a lot of things would kind of potentially fall into direct traffic where Google was unsure what the referral source is. And that really was a mystery bucket. And it made it really difficult to really attribute data. Now we're going to have a bunch of default channel groupings. So for instance, you never before would see paid social or paid shopping or even cross network. This is where somebody perhaps was in multiple different networks. They could have been on both Facebook ads and both YouTube ads, and it would attribute it to cross network. So you're going to see a lot more options. Even organic video is a brand new one. So that's going to be like YouTube and being able to see if you have YouTube. Organic shopping. So if you have organic shopping, you would see it in there versus if you're running paid ads, you would see it in paid shopping. Before, it was very limited, and you basically saw, email, display, Google, search, and direct, and that was it. Now with G4, we can really break down and understand, where did that traffic particularly come from? And this is all going to be based on information that Google now has. So it's really a big upgrade from what there was before. There is a whole list of default source categories that we will have along with this for you to understand what category your potential marketing that you're doing is going into. So be sure to check out that resource. So another thing that has changed a lot is filters. So you will be able to create rules, find what internal traffic is, but bot filtering is now happening automatically. So you no longer need to create these complicated filters in order to filter out bots. This is going to happen naturally. It's also and a lot easier to do cross-domain figured directly inside the G4 platform. So you're not going to need complicated coding in which you would have to have before in order for this to work. It's going to be a lot simpler. So it's going to be a lot easier for us to kind of tell when somebody is leaving our site and going to a different site in order to complete the conversion or the desired action. All right, so when it comes to audiences, none of your audiences that you had in G4 are going, or in Universal, are going to carry over to G4. So it's going to be really important that you get in there sooner than later and start to create and build your audiences. Reason being is because you can't do remarketing until those audiences are set up. And in a lot of cases, you need a certain threshold or a certain amount of visitors in order for that to make sense. So you got to have at least 1,000 to be in the display network. And if you don't have a lot of traffic to your website, then you need to get that set up sooner than later. All right, so here's another item that has changed quite a bit, and that is the reporting dashboards. Previously, we would rely a lot on Google Data Studio, but now a lot of these reports are not going over to Google Data Studio like they would before. Instead, there are a lot of dashboards that are already built inside of G4. So it's kind of become a switch where you need to learn to use the reporting that is available in G4. There are a lot of things that make it quite different. They have pre-built a lot of life cycle and user reporting, but it's going to be important to set up a lot of different audience filters in order to get the type of reporting that you are used to that you could get with Universal. There are a lot of metrics that have been removed, so you have to look for that. And there's going to be some overwriting of the default pages. So there is a lot to consider when it comes to G4 and everything that has changed. A lot of things have gone away that are no longer there. And there's really a mind change that has to take place with this cookieless world. So we're not going to be able to track what we are normally used to being able to track. And this is all going to happen in July of 2023. So it is upon us. It's going to be really important for you to get in there, understand G4, and start to measure your different buying cycles that you have with your funnel. All right, my name's Jennifer Denny, and that is it for today. Take care.